In this video, I want to tell you the story about the time that I backed out of a job offer, even after signing the offer letter. Now, I'm not particularly proud of this, but I do think there may be some valuable lessons within the story, so let's get into it. So basically, at the time, I was working for a company, a small startup in New Jersey that I actually really enjoyed working for. But by the time I was ready to start doing this job search, the company started changing. They were going through a lot of growth, started hiring more people, started becoming a little bit more corporate-y, and I started feeling like my place in the company is not quite cemented anymore. I wasn't feeling like I fit in just the same, because when the company was smaller, I felt like I had my place. I didn't feel that anymore. I was like, okay, the time has come for me to start my job search. It's time for me to move on. So I went on to Stack Overflow and I found a job listing for another job that seemed very interesting, seemed very exciting. Another startup. I was like, perfect, let's go ahead and apply to that job. So I did. I applied to the job, went through their interview process, and as I'm actually going through the interview process with this other company, I actually was invited to interview with a different company. So while I'm currently working for my current company, I'm now going through the interview process with two different companies. Now the thing is, the company that I actually applied to, in other words, not the one that invited me to interview with them, but rather the company that I actually applied to, that interview process was kind of moving along very nicely, and it was kind of moving along at a slightly accelerated pace. We finally got to the point where we're going to start having a conversation about the money. So I gave them the range about what it is that I'm asking for. So let's just make up some numbers for the sake of some context. Let's say that I said I want to fall in between $200,000 a year and $230,000 a year. Now, mind you, those numbers are way beyond what I asked for. I'm just using some examples for us to have some numbers to talk about. So they were totally okay with that number. They're like, sure, that's fine. And I was like super excited about that because that was like a pretty big increase from what my current salary was. So I was like super happy. But what ended up happening was, after that conversation happened, and at this point I had already gone through the sort of technical exercises, I'd already had my in-person interview with them, I've already met them, I've seen their office, I've seen the whole shebang, the whole sort of flow of the company. I started getting a bit of a feeling within my heart that this company might not actually be for me. See, it turns out the company was very small. I think they had even less than 10 employees. They didn't even have their own office. They had like a sort of shared workspace that they were kind of renting, and they were all kind of working out of one room, maybe the size of this room that I'm in right now, maybe slightly bigger. The whole vibe was just kind of weird. I was getting sort of an uneasy feeling about it. They even told me that they only have enough money to kind of hold them over for like about another year, and unless if they don't turn profitable, they might just try to like raise a bridge round, but they're not really trying to raise any more real money. It just felt like they didn't have that much more runway, and I just got a bad vibe because of that. Now remember, while this is happening, I was also interviewing with a different company that actually invited me to interview with them. Now this company was far more established. They were still in the startup stages, but they were actually trying to raise money. They actually had raised money. I think at the time they had just closed on a Series B. They had a lot of runway, a lot of capital. They had their own office. It just felt like a way more established company. I was like, this is maybe the company that I'd rather go and work for as opposed to this company. But the thing is, this company, the one that actually I applied to, in this really small company that I'm talking about, their interview process was moving along at a much more accelerated pace. We finally got to the point where we were actually talking about money, whereas with that company, I had only just about gotten to just about past their sort of technical round, meaning I was still before their in-person round, and with this other company, I was already up to the sort of offer stage. So we were moving at a sort of much faster pace. Now, I distinctly remember actually telling my wife that, you know what, even if this company does decide to give me an offer, even at the numbers that we were discussing, I still think that I'm going to say no, because ultimately I'm getting a bad vibe. I feel like the company's too small. They're not in a good footing. I'm just getting a bad feeling about this. I don't think this company is for me. I'm just going to go ahead and say no. I'm rather just going to go ahead and pursue the interview process with that other company and see where that goes. That company feels way more established. That just feels more right for me. So I had made up my mind that when the offer actually comes, I'm going to say no. But as it turns out, when the offer actually came, the phone call actually came, I was thrown for a loop. See, it turns out, remember, I had said that I want to kind of fall into somewhere between $200,000 and $230,000 a year. Instead, they decided to offer me $240,000 a year, which is a good $10,000 more than the highest number within my range. Again, these numbers are totally made up, but I'm just trying to give you the idea that they actually offered me way more than what I had asked for, even on sort of the top end of my range, which threw me for a loop, because suddenly now all that conviction that I had in my heart that this company is not for me went out the window, because I started getting clouded by the money. Like, this was some serious money. In fact, the offer that they were offering me was actually a $50,000 a year increase from the company that I was currently working for. I mean, there are people that literally make just $50,000 a year as their salary, and this is now going to be my raise. I was just so lost in that money. That was just such big money. I was like, I don't know how to really react. And so suddenly all my conviction about not taking the offer was gone. I was totally confused. I remember having conversations with my wife about it, my father, my brother, my friends. Like, I was like talking to anybody to kind of get some insights about what it is that I should maybe do here. And the truth of the matter is, I was just getting more and more conflicted the more conversations I ultimately ended up having. Now, the problem was, I felt like at this point, because I was already given an offer, the offer has a sort of expiration date on it. Even though I told them that I need a little bit more time so that I can make the decision, which meant I kind of bought myself a buffer. But it turns out the buffer offer that I bought myself wasn't enough time to continue pursuing the interview process with that other company, which meant I was basically at a fork here. I had to either accept and then just not be able to continue the interview process with that other company, or decline and then potentially walk away from that kind of money for a interview process that may or may not go the other way. In other words, it wasn't like I actually had the opportunity to sort of choose between two different offers. I had an offer that I can either walk away from to continue the other interview process, or give up on that other interview process and then take this offer for a job that ultimately in my heart I didn't feel like was the right job for me, but the money was really, really good. Well, guess what? I chose the money. I decided to walk away from the other interview process. I told them that I had accepted another offer, and I did in fact actually accept this offer. I gave them the verbal confirmation. They then sent me the paperwork, and I then signed the offer letter. Now, this is where the story gets even more interesting. When it finally came for me to actually give notice to the company that I was currently working for, in other words, at my current job, I actually went into my boss and I was like, okay, I want to talk to you really quickly. And he actually said, I already know where this conversation is going. I'm not really quite sure how he got that feeling. But anyways, I told him that I actually received an offer from another company and I accepted. And literally, I mean, the moment I had finished that sentence, I didn't even get a chance to take a breath. He already comes back to me and he's like, can we counter? Now, this wasn't even an eventuality that I thought about. I was like, there's no way that they're going to want to counter me. It wasn't even a scenario that I played out in my head. So I had no idea how to really respond. And I remember throughout this whole time, I really didn't want to take that job. I mostly just took it because of the money. And the whole time I was kind of like feeling uneasy about this. And now the first second that somebody gave me the opportunity, that sort of second of thought that I can actually bail, because I said, you know what, we'll give you a counter. The first chance that I got to bail on that other offer, I did, even though I signed, because they gave me this counter. I was uneasy about this job. I was like, you know what, I like this job. I know there's some things that I'm not happy about. I'm going to just take my lifeboat. I'm going to just stay here. I'm not going to go ahead and I'm going to back out of that other offer. Now, the thing is, I actually ended up taking a slight decrease of the sort of big raise. So for example, if let's say I was supposed to be getting a raise of like $50,000 by jumping to that other job, I ended up only getting a raise of about $35,000 by staying with this job, which is fine because it's still a pretty big increase. I wasn't really worried about the money aspect of it, but the main thing was now I kind of walked away from the job that I felt uneasy about. I felt like, you know what, this company here might have its issues, but at least it's a company that I've already been working for close to 2 years now. I know it. I know its flaws. Instead of jumping into the unknown, the sort of big scary unknown, especially a company that's that small and I don't know what its future holds, I felt like it was the right thing for me to do, even though I had already signed the offer letter. Now, here's the worst part about the whole thing. 6 months later, I decided to quit that job anyway. So here are basically a few lessons that I think we can take out from this whole story. Number one, first and foremost, I know this may sound a bit cliche, but the truth of the matter is I think there's a lot of truth to it. Trust your gut. If you're feeling very uneasy about an opportunity that's kind of coming your way for whatever reason, right? Sometimes there's a concept of getting cold feet, and it's a little bit hard to figure out when it's just cold feet and when you actually should just trust your intuition. But give yourself enough credit that your intuition is telling you something that you should listen to. If you're feeling super, super uneasy about a particular job offer, if it feels shady, it feels like it's a scam, the company doesn't have proper morals, they don't have enough money to keep them afloat for another 6 months, you're worried you might be out of a job, whatever the reason that you're feeling uneasy about a job offer, trust your gut, listen to yourself. Don't jump into something just because of the money. I know it's very easy for me to sit here and say that because I literally did just that. But I think that's why I can't say that, because I think I made that mistake by actually jumping in to something purely because of the money. And then I ended up making this sort of mistake of actually backing out of an offer even after I signed it, which by the way is unprofessional. And they were actually really upset at me. In fact, the CEO even called me to have a conversation about it. And he didn't quite say it, but he almost said like he's pretty pissed off at me for doing that. And honestly, rightfully so. The other thing that I think is also very important to kind of discuss here is the fact that I was offered a counter offer. And the truth of the matter is my main motivation for leaving the current job wasn't even about the money. Sure, the money was nice, but the main motivation that I had for leaving this current job wasn't even about the money anyway. So then when they offered me a counter offer, I did actually say, well, you know what? I'm not only trying to leave about the money, there are a few things that bothered me. And then they went ahead and promised that they're going to go ahead and fix those things. And to their defense, they did try to fix those things, but ultimately it wasn't enough. And I still wasn't happy with my job. So I guess my point is simply counter offers, especially, in other words, it's one thing if the whole reason why you want to leave is really only about the money, which 9 times out of 10, that's not the case. 9 times out of 10, when you actually want to leave a job, it's because of another reason besides for just the money. Typically, the money is one of the sort of smallest reasons as to why you might want to leave a job. When you are getting a counter offer for that more money, understand that that's ultimately only going to be abandoned for 3 to 6 months, and then you're going to end up jumping ship anyway. So what's the point of taking a counter offer? So the next time that you're in a position where you're actually being offered a counter offer, really think, was the reason why you wanted to leave in the first place really only about the money, or was there something else that was bothering you that money can't fix? And that does it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please drop a like, and I'll catch you in the next one.